D&D number 4, Weeds Grow in Jesus' Name. Chapter 7. Things were supposed to get better. After all, they'd removed the problem. They understood now what they were dealing with, and yet the week was becoming one from hell. It began with Jason stopping by early Monday morning to throw 5 of the latest scandal magazines on the breakfast table. Each led the reader through the sordid tale of Brianna Adams having a torrid affair with her brother. One magazine stated, even though they weren't truly brother and sister, it was kind of like Marcia Brady going to bed with stepbrother Greg. Ew. Ricky's reaction was unemotional. Bree's the complete opposite. She'd run to her room, thrown herself across her bed. It'd taken Ricky half the day to be allowed entrance. At first, he thought she'd blame him, but thankfully she was merely angry at the situation and also at Beth. She'd allowed Ricky to hold her and comfort her, and for Rick, that was huge, since she was just as well could have shut him out right then. He understood that her career meant everything to her. So the fact that she wasn't turning him away was a sign that he also meant something to her. Eric's blood tests showed surprisingly large amounts of anabolic steroids in his system. Even so, the doctor advised him that he didn't think it was the sole cause of the mood swings described, especially since they were directed at one person. He suggested Eric schedule that appointment with Dr. Chin. Jeffy overheard 2 teachers at her school talking about Ricky and Bree, and being a Keno, she confronted them. She hadn't meant to be disrespectful. She just told them that they didn't understand, that Ricky and Bree had done nothing wrong, and that they were stupid to think that. When she'd been sent to the principal's office and realized that she was being disciplined, she'd burst out crying and had been inconsolable. Shelley had been called, and when Shelley went to pick Jeffy up, she had her own 2 cents worth to add to Jeffy's opinion, and it ended up with Jeffy being pulled out of the school. Shelley making the decision to pull Jeffy without consulting Eric turned out to be a bad idea. Eric had thundered his displeasure. He stormed out of the house to try to get himself under control, realizing that he was doing it again. But it was too late for Shelley. She was left curled up on the bed in a state of shock. On Wednesday, Joey's temper got the best of him as some kids at school rode him mercilessly about Ricky and Bree. It was the use of the word incest that had finally sent him over the top. It started as Joey against 3, but as he hurt more and more people, others joined in to finally defeat the cocky member of the Keno family. Mark had run to help Joey, and the 2 of them were able to hold off the other 8 or 9. Unfortunately, the fact that they hadn't started the fight hadn't kept them from being suspended from school. The principal didn't want anyone accusing him of giving the Keno family preferential treatment. Mark was devastated. The high school All-American would miss one of the most important games of his senior year. The coach also let his displeasure be known. Then, to add insult to injury, Mark felt he had to let Jana, his girlfriend of 2 years, know why he suddenly refused to kiss her. She broke up with him. Joey was consumed with guilt for getting into the fight in the first place and causing even more pain for his brother. And Ricky tried to dismiss the guilt feelings he was having. It had been his desire to come home and find love. He hadn't meant to destroy everyone's life just so he could have the woman he wanted. And Shelley also felt guilty for bringing Beth into their home. If not for her, no one would know about Ricky and Bree until they'd been ready to handle the publicity correctly. And Eric wouldn't be going through whatever he was feeling. None of this stuff would have happened if not for Beth. So when Eric wrote her about inviting Beth into their home, she actually began to feel she deserved it. She was an idiot. Ricky watched his father try to control his temper every minute of the day. His hand would ball into a fist, his jaw would clench. Instead of trying to speak civilly to Shelley, he decided not to speak at all. When Shelley found out the doctor didn't believe it was the steroids in Eric's system that was causing his mood, she plummeted. Thank goodness Justin had volunteered to stay the week. He'd been a tower of strength for Eric and Shelley. When Eric, in a fit of anger, grabbed Shelley by the arm on Thursday, Justin had been there to step in. Ricky never thought he'd see the day when he'd have to keep his father from hurting a woman. And after seeing to Eric, Justin had gone to Shelley and let her cry on his shoulder. He didn't know what else to do. Dr. Chin had promised to come see Eric, but he couldn't make it until Sunday. Friday night, when the family should have been cheering away at Mark's football game, they, each in their own world, rambled listlessly around the house. Mark, not allowed to attend a school function while under suspension, finally announced he was going out. Joey decided to join his brother. Jason and Angel stopped by to pick up Jeffy and take her to their house for an impromptu spend the night party with Kimmy. Eric and Justin sat in the great room speaking in low tones. Ricky and Bree were in the kitchen making sandwiches, and Shelley came downstairs, excited about a new project she intended to start first thing in the morning. She came into the kitchen to get Bree's input. So, I thought, Eric's been talking about painting the weapons room for months now. I could do it for him, as a surprise. He would be so pleased. Bree eyed Ricky before she spoke. Mom, I think it's a great idea. You want to go get the paint tonight? I was hoping you'd say that, Shelley said. I'll go get my purse. Bree watched her leave the room before she turned to Ricky. We can just hire someone to paint the room, Ricky said. I know, but she looked so excited, and I didn't have the heart to put a damper on her spirits. Ricky nodded. You want me to come with you? She shook her head. No, that's okay. I'm not ready to handle that yet. Handle what? When she didn't answer, he frowned, and then it hit him. Oh, you mean being seen in public with me? Wringing her hand, she turned to him. Please try to understand. I need to take things slowly. It's not that I don't care about you. Care about me? He sighed. Okay, so then you care about me. That's a start, I guess. I'm glad to know that. He pushed his sandwich away. I think I'll go for a run. He started out of the kitchen and then turned. I'll tell you the same thing I told Mark and Joey. Be careful. If Tommy will send Beth to do his dirty work, there's no telling what other plans he has. New scene. Beth lay across the filthy bed Tommy had provided for her. She didn't care that it was dirty. She didn't care that she had nothing. She didn't need anything. She only wanted her family to have the help they needed. Right now, she was simply grateful that Tommy seemed to have lost interest in her after that first night back. He'd pretty much left her on her own since then, so it was a surprise when one of his boys knocked on her door. Tommy wants to see you, he called. She sat up, dreading what lay in store, yet she knew she had to go. Sighing, she went downstairs to find Tommy. He sat at the small kitchen table. Have a seat, he said. Beth sat. You've been making yourself scarce? She shrugged. I'm just ready for all this to be over so I can go home and help my parents. Well, it can't be over until we have the information we need. I don't know what else to do. I tried my best. Tommy nodded. You didn't do too badly, but you see, I still need more information. I want you to think, if there is ever a time when Ricky Kino is alone and outside of the house. Beth's brow furrowed, and finally she looked up. He goes out at night sometime. I think he drives into town to party. Tommy frowned. It was a possibility, but it would be hard to catch him alone. There must be something else. She shrugged. I don't know what else. He and his father work out together almost every day, and they spar out on the beach. He runs pretty regularly, almost every day. Tommy looked up. What time? Well, not always at the same time, but always during daylight hours. Where does he run? On the beach. How far does he go? I don't know. He's usually gone about an hour. Tommy smiled. Perfect. I don't think he's going to tell you what you want to know. I bet he does, Tommy said slyly. Beth frowned. Tommy, are you sure you've got all the facts straight? I mean, Shelley has scars all over her arms and legs, supposedly where your brother cut her up. Did you know that? Is that what she told you? Oh, she's good. She did that to herself. She's one of those weirdos who hurt themselves on purpose. They can't help it. That right there should tell you what perverts they all are. She shook her head. I don't know, Tommy. They really seemed so nice, especially Shelley. And their little girl, Jeffy. She is just the cutest kid in the world. Tommy looked Beth over. She'd served her purpose, of course. He never intended to send family to her money. He had plenty of money and could have bailed her family out a long time ago. He certainly didn't intend to get any out of the Kenos. He would only get blood from them, but Beth didn't need to know that. He nodded. He'd needed Beth to do a job, and she certainly did it. It was the information he wanted that she'd failed to get. Maybe she's reached the end of her usefulness. The AIDS thing really kept her from being very attractive as far as he was concerned. He scratched his forehead. The AIDS thing. It could actually be useful in and of itself. Yep, he'd keep her around a little longer. What were you saying? Tommy asked. I was talking about how cute little Jeffy is. Well, little Jeffy may just be the way to get the information that I need. Beth gasped. You wouldn't hurt a little girl, would you? Tommy smiled. As long as the Kenos cooperate, she would remain safe. No, Beth stood. No, Tommy, I can't let you do it. You are not going to hurt Jeffy. She's innocent in all this. Beth stood and started for the door. Where do you think you're going? Tommy asked, rising from his chair. I'm leaving. I will not be a party to you hurting Jeffy. He moved quickly, grabbing her by the arm and jerking her away from the door. You're not going anywhere. She struggled to get away. Let me go, Tommy. I'm leaving. He pulled her back and slammed her down into the chair. I said, you're not going anywhere. Not unless I say so. You can't keep me here, she yelled. He laughed. Oh, can't I? Looking up at his flunkies, he nodded. Get some rope. She sprang from her seat and ran toward the stairs. If she could just get to a room and lock the door, she could buy herself time enough to make a phone call. She only made it as far as the stairs when one guy grabbed her ankle, jerking her leg out from under her. She landed hard on the steps, smacking her chin and busting it open. Blood spewed down her neck and onto her shirt, and moaning, she rolled over, trying to get her bearings. The man twisted her arm behind her back and forced her back to the kitchen. What do you want me to do with her? Tommy turned from looking out the window. Take her down to the basement, tie her hands and feet, and toss her in one of those rooms that has a lock. Will do. He dragged Beth toward the basement door and headed down the steps. Beth fought with all her strength, and the guy finally slapped her hard. Hey, Tommy yelled from upstairs. I need her alive. Yes, sir. New scene. Saturday morning arrived. Unfortunately, it didn't change the prevailing mood in the Keno home. Ricky knew it was up to him to bring his family out of the funk, but he wasn't sure how to do it. Usually he could lighten a situation with a well-placed joke, only at present there truly was nothing to joke about. The main news of the morning was Mark's team had lost the game. Shelley tried to cheer him up by pointing out that they couldn't get along without him. He tried to see her point. If they'd won, maybe his coach, who was extremely angry with Mark, would keep the number 2 QB as his starter just for spite. But he also needed his team to have a winning season to garner the attention he needed and other players on the team needed to keep the recruiters focused on them. Joey went with Eric to help teach a Saturday morning class. Jeffy was still at the Lees, and Bree tried to help Shelley with her new project, but Shelley wanted to be able to say that she did it all by herself, so she shooed Bree away. Justin had also offered help, and when Shelley refused him too, he gave her advice on how to handle the movement of some of the weaponry. He didn't want Eric to be angry about her damaging something. And when he felt she was doing okay, he went to the study and used it as his office to catch up on some work. Ricky found Bree out on the deck just off the dining room. Hi, gorgeous. She turned and smiled. Hey, you okay? Sure. He watched her face. She was as down as everyone else. He sighed. All this is going to go away, sweetheart. She nodded. I know. Bree, I know you're worried about the media and how all this will affect your career, and we'll figure something out. We'll talk to your manager and to your publicist, and we'll find an angle. Your career is not in jeopardy. Bree smiled softly. I believe you. He came to her and placed his hands on her shoulders and started to say more, but realized it wouldn't make a difference right now, so he changed his mind. Come walk on the beach with me and we'll think only happy thoughts. She looked up into his dark brown eyes. He was so very sincere, so loving and caring and strong. She accepted the invitation. They walked hand in hand along the line where the waves just start to retreat. Bree stopped to pick up shells for Jeffy whenever she saw one that was particularly lovely. I missed having you in my bed last night, Ricky said. Bree brushed some hair out of her face. I missed you too. Then why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you come to me? Ricky smiled. Well, I was afraid of wearing out my welcome. Do you think it can be worn out? I'd like to try and see, he said, laughing, and then he frowned. It's been worn out before. She nodded. I was confused back then. Actually, I still am. The only difference is I'm more willing to admit that I want you. What I want you for is a different issue. Normally, I would be making a joke, telling you to feel free to use me, but that's not funny anymore. I want more than that, and I think you know that. I do. I would be telling you to feel free to use me, but that's not funny anymore. I want more than that, I think. You know that. I do. He was actually feeling pretty guilty about the last time. What had he done? He'd come home, spoken to his father, gotten on his knees, asked for forgiveness, turned over a new leaf, and then only a few weeks later he'd taken Bree to his bed. It had seemed like it was essential, almost crucial, to their moving forward in their relationship. He would have to speak with her and share these feelings with her. He was sure she'd understand. And now he felt even more guilty because, knowing all this, he still, just now, invited her back into his bed. Maybe it's out of habit. Maybe he's one of those who simply cannot control his urges. No, he refused to fall to that excuse. He is not weak. He does need to have a conversation with Bree, though, about his spiritual convictions. He sighed as they walked silently for a while. Do you want children, Bree? She looked up at him, surprise on her face. I haven't really given it much thought. I guess all I've thought about for years was my next career move. She moved along beside him, the image of creating a child with Ricky running through her mind, carrying his child, giving birth to his child, presenting his child to him. What would it look like? Probably a lot like Jeffy. What would it look like? Probably a lot like Jeffy. Or would it be a girl or a boy? What kind of father would Ricky be? He'd be the best. The question is, what kind of mother would she be? He tugged on her hand. Did my question upset you? She smiled. No, it just promoted thought. Do you want children? Oh, lots. A huge house filled with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Stop, I get it. Now you're scaring me. He laughed. Wonder what that is, he said, pointing to something shiny glistening in the sand. He let go of her hand and moved to retrieve the shiny object. Bree joined him. A CD? Ricky frowned, all joviality gone. Yes. I guess someone doesn't like that particular music. It's not a music CD, it's a meditation CD. Meditation? Yes, synchrogram. It's the newest in technology. Back in the 80s, they discovered that certain sounds can produce the effects of being in a deep meditative state. After much research and trial and error, a few companies came out with the technology on CD. Synchrogram is the one my dad likes to use. They actually have programs you can just download now, but Dad says it's not as powerful as the ones on CD, which they still make because a lot of people feel that way. Their CD expands your mind by helping you to achieve extremely deep meditations and possibly produce out-of-body experiences, they say. They synchronize the right and left brain and put you in different states like theta and delta. Wow. Yeah, wow. His expression, though, was not one of awe. What's the matter, Ricky? Don't you think it's odd that the exact, almost obsolete CD that my father listens to is out here in the sand? The exact CD? Maybe he didn't like it and threw it out. He looked at her like she was crazy. He wouldn't do that. He's doing a lot of things he wouldn't necessarily do lately. Maybe, but even with that, I'm more inclined to think that if he didn't like the CD, he would return it for a refund or throw it away. He wouldn't toss it into the ocean like a frisbee. He wouldn't ever trash the ocean. Maybe it belonged to someone else. Come on, Bree. That would be too much of a coincidence, and there are no such things as coincidences. He took her hand and started back toward the house. Well, what are we going to do? She asked. We're going to do some investigating. They went straight to their parents' bedroom and straight to the CD player on Eric's nightstand. Ricky opened the player to find what looked like the exact same CD. Sitting down on the bed, he removed it and held the two side by side. One was scratched and worn, of course, from being tossed around in the waves, but the logos and design were the same. Ricky, I just thought of something. He looked up. What? Oh, remember I mentioned to you that one of the times I overheard Beth talking on the phone, she said something about a CD. I didn't think anything of it at the time. People talk about music all the time, but now that we know she was talking to Tommy and they were talking about a CD, well, as you said, there are no coincidences. Ricky put the headphones on and loaded the CD. He listened carefully, but all he could hear was rain falling and thunder and a series of chimes and sounds. He shook his head and passed the earphones to Bree. She listened for a few minutes and then handed it back to Ricky. Ricky rose. We're taking these to Jason. He'll have a sound guy go over them. Hopefully we'll know something soon. They wasted no time. They checked on Shelley's progress, let Justin know where they were headed, and went straight to Jason's house. While there, they stayed and played with the girls for a while, thinking they would bring Jeffy home with them, but Jeffy wanted to stay another day. They could hardly blame her. The atmosphere at home was not conducive to a great time. It was early evening by the time Ricky and Bree returned home. They came home to Bedlam. Eric, dressed in a suit, came downstairs, calling Shelley as Ricky and Bree came in. Have you seen my wife? He asked. Bree and Ricky realized at the same time that Shelley was probably still working in the room downstairs. They had completely forgotten about the big dinner with Jillian Knight, and they were sure Shelley had also. Justin emerged from the study about the time Shelley came up the steps. She was spattered with red and white paint and wearing a big smile. Hi, Eric, she said happily. I have a big surprise for you, but I'm not done yet. It's taken me a little longer than I thought it would. When he only frowned, her expression fell. It was then she noticed his clothes. Why are you not ready to go to dinner? Her mouth fell open, her face paled. Oh, no, I completely forgot. I got so involved in what I was doing, I didn't even realize it was today. Just look at me, I'm a mess. He shook his head. How selfish can you be, Shelley? This interview is not just about me. It's about the whole family. With the bad publicity going on with Ricky and Bree, I thought you'd be more than willing to at least try to make a good impression. Dad, don't worry about me and Bree. We can take whatever they can dish out. Shelley looked ready to pass out. What time is it? Do I have time to get dressed? If I don't leave within the next 10 minutes, I'll be late, and I don't intend to be late. I'll not keep Jillian waiting for us. Justin stepped in. Shelley, you go get cleaned up and dressed. Eric, you go ahead, and I'll bring Shelley along as soon as she's ready, and you can let Jillian know that Shelley was held up. Eric considered the solution for a moment. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate your willingness to help. No problem. Without a word, Shelley took off up the stairs, and Bree rushed to help her. Ricky looked his father over. Dad, do you think you're being a little hard on her? Eric heaved a sigh. Apparently, I am. Damn it. His father never cursed, and Ricky felt like he was in an alternate universe. He glanced at Justin, who only shook his head. Eric ran a hand over his forehead. It would help if this headache would just go away. Another headache, Dad? We need to get you to a doctor. Well, Ray is coming tomorrow, and that will be soon enough. In the meantime, I have to get to this interview. Ricky and Justin watched him leave. Ricky, Bree called from upstairs. What is it now? He asked as he entered the room. Shelley sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her knees drawn up. Mom says she's not going. Ricky knelt beside her. Come on, Shelley. You can do this. No, I can't. She looked up into Ricky's eyes with such a look of sorrow it broke his heart. She wiped tears off her face with the back of her hand. I can't do this anymore. I won't do it. I'm not going to that restaurant so he can belittle me in front of the whole world. I'm not going. It will make things worse for you if you don't go, Mom, Bree said. I don't care. I can't take any more. I just can't. Please don't try to make me. Well, no one's going to make you do anything, Mom. I love you so much. Don't worry. Ricky and I will take care of everything. Shelley looked up. How will you do that? Bree looked at Ricky. We'll go instead. You and Ricky? Yes. We'll go and we'll make an excuse about your not being well and we'll say all the right things so that Jillian Knight will be very happy. There's going to be more than one interview, so you can go to the next one. Shelley sniffed. Thank you. Ricky helped Bree up. I guess we'd better hurry. You go ahead and start getting ready. I'll be right there. Once Ricky left the room, Bree helped her mother undress and put on a gown. Mom, I have some pills that may relax you. Would you like one? What are they? Valium. What are you doing with Valium? A friend on the set gave them to me when I was having trouble sleeping. I only used them once. They really do help you relax. I know you're not supposed to take anything without a prescription, but, people do it all the time. Do you want one? I'll try anything to make the pain stop. I'll go get them. Be right back. Once Bree had administered the medicine, she took her mother's hand. This is going to get better. Shelley didn't respond. Bree pulled the comforter gently over her mother's shoulders and left quietly. Next scene. As the valet drove the car away, Ricky took Bree's hand. Are you sure you want to do this? Bree nodded. We may as well test the water and see how people react to us. He offered his arm, and she held on for dear life. As they moved through the restaurant, there was definitely a low murmur. Bree held her head up high. Ricky covered her hand with his and squeezed tight. Bree was happy to finally get to the table. Time for a performance. Eric rose, his eyes questioning. Hi, Dad, Ricky said. He turned to Jillian, beautiful in her red suit and ice blonde hair. Nice to see you again. Bree and I wondered how you would feel if we came and crashed your interview. Jillian's eyes lit up and she smiled broadly. Oh, please do. What an unexpected treat. Ricky seated Bree, then sat across from her. Bree smiled sweetly at Jillian. To be honest, I also came with a message from Mom. She is terribly sorry that she won't be able to make it. She's not feeling well at all. She leaned forward. A woman's thing, she whispered. Last night when she went to bed, she was already feeling bad and she thought it might be better by today, but it only seemed to get worse. She does hope you'll understand and looks forward to the next time. Of course, I completely understand. I suffer some of the same symptoms. Me too, Bree said, glancing at Ricky. He was grinning at her. So, we don't want to steal any of Eric's thunder, Bree said. Oh, I have a feeling there's no way that could be done, Jillian said. He is a remarkable man. Yes, he is, Ricky said. He taught you everything you know? Ricky glanced at Bree. Almost everything. Jillian, catching their undertones, decided to take the bull by the horns. Well, even though I'm here to interview your father and find out all about him, why don't I ask about the elephant in the room and get it out of the way? Ricky nodded. The rumor is the two of you are having a fiery affair. Eric choked on his water and Bree froze. Ricky smiled broadly. Absolutely torrid. Jillian remained quiet. Bree and I dated a long time ago, before our parents were married. It was instant chemistry. We cooled things off while she pursued her career and I pursued other women. Jillian laughed. You're very honest, aren't you? My father would accept nothing less. Jillian nodded. Another feather for Master Kino. So what made you suddenly decide to get back together? We've never really stopped having feelings for each other, and I realized I wanted more out of life than what I had. I realized that whatever more I found, I wanted to find it with Bree. I think she's my soulmate. Well, this is all so very romantic. Too bad the rest of the world can't seem to see it that way. Well, who knows? Maybe after they read my article with the romantic spin, the whole world will hope you're one of the few Hollywood couples that actually stay together. Who knows, Ricky said. I'd like to read that article before you print it. That would be my pleasure. The waiter came and took Ricky and Bree's order. So, after dinner, Eric is taking me around the strip to showing me all the hot spots and clubs the Keno family likes to frequent. Will you be tagging along? Oh, we just might, Bree said, frowning at her stepfather. He certainly hadn't mentioned that to Shelley. New scene. Shelley kicked the covers off. With the help of the pill Bree had given her, she'd fallen asleep quickly. Unfortunately, she was now wide awake. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, and the room spun. Moaning, she put a hand to her head, trying to ward off the dizzy spell, but as her mind cleared, the emotional pain of the past weeks came to her in a rush, and all she wanted to do was go back to sleep. She didn't want to think of the pain in her heart. She didn't want to remember all the hurtful things Eric had said to her over the past few weeks. It felt as if life was over. It wasn't, of course. She had the kids. She gasped. The kids! Where are the children? Panic overtook her briefly, but then she remembered. Jeffy was spending another night with Kimmy, and Mark and Joey had driven up north to San Francisco to visit their father and stepmother. She was all alone, except for Justin, who was probably in bed. Good old Justin. Eric's best friend in the whole world had also befriended her. He'd been there through some tough times. Shelley peered at the clock on her nightstand. 11. Then she noticed that Bree had left the bottle of pills. She opened it, took another one, then went downstairs in search of solace. She found it in the form of an expensive bottle of scotch. She took out a crystal glass and poured the amber liquid, filling the glass to the rim. She held it up in front of her eyes. That ought to do it, she thought. Taking a large swallow, she shuddered with the burn. Her eyes watered, and then she felt warm. She gulped down the rest of the glass. The goal? To feel nothing but oblivion. Grabbing the bottle, she slipped down on one of the huge couches in the front living room and allowed herself a good cry. New scene. Justin sat in bed, his laptop propped on a pillow on his legs. The keys made a pleasant clicking sound as he finished up the official letter, giving a particular corporation fair warning of possible suit if they didn't acquiesce to his client's wishes. It was late, after midnight, so he was surprised when he heard the loud knock on his door. Come in, he called, thinking Eric was home and wanted to talk. The door opened sharply and banged against the wall. Shelley stepped inside the room. Justin, she said, her speech slurred. Justin, I want to talk to you. Oh, Shelley, what in the world are you doing? You know you don't drink well. She snorted. Well enough. I see that. He closed his laptop and set it aside. Okay, doll. What do you want to talk about? He rose, not worried about the fact that he wasn't dressed. He had on some pajama bottoms. That was good enough. She, on the other hand, had on a white lacy nightgown, and he couldn't help but think that she looked like an angel, albeit slightly mischievous. She stumbled forward, held up a mostly empty bottle of scotch. He took her by the shoulders and guided her to sit in a chair. I don't want to sit down, she said as she struggled to her feet. I need to talk to you. He reached for the bottle. Okay, but no more of this. She let him take it. You want a drink? He smiled. No, that's okay. And you shouldn't be drinking either. She gave an exaggerated shrug. Justin, why doesn't Eric like me anymore? Oh, sweetheart, Eric loves you. He does. He's just going through a bad time right now. She shook her head. A tear dripped over her lower lashes and coursed down her cheek. Bree said it was because of the steroids, but I don't think so, 'cause it's been a while now, since little Bethy was here. She stumbled again, and this time Justin caught her and set her on the bed. We'll figure it out, hon. Please don't worry. But Shelley, drinking doesn't help. You know that. He sat next to her and put his arm around her. She sniffled. I was just trying to sleep. I need to sleep. She turned and curled up on the end of his bed and cried into the mattress. Okay, hon. He rubbed her back as he spoke soothingly to her. There now. Everything will work out. You'll see. Please don't be sad, Shelley girl. She finally quieted. I just need to sleep, she said softly. Okay, but you can't do it here. Come on, I'll take you to bed. He tried to pull her up, but her body was limp. Shelley, come on, let me take you to bed, he said gently. She rolled over and sat up. Oh, Justin, I need Eric. I need him like he used to be. Grimacing, Justin ran his hands over his face. She was in so much pain, and he had no idea what to do about it. He could think of nothing he could do to comfort her. She stood and went for the bottle on the table where Justin had placed it. She got a gulp down before he was able to grab it from her again. She threw herself in his arms and laid her head against his chest. Why doesn't he love me anymore? Why? Justin wrapped his arm around her and held her tight. He does, sweetie. You just have to trust him. She tossed her head back and forth. No, he doesn't. He's sick and tired of looking at me. That's what he said. Sick and tired. Justin wished he knew what was wrong with his friend. It was like he was a different person, and he'd been having headaches. Could it be something as bad as a brain tumor or bipolar disorder? They would eventually find out, but it was hell not knowing. Justin, do you think I'm pretty? You're beautiful, Shelley. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Justin. She grabbed his hand and brought it to her mouth and kissed it. He immediately tried to draw it back, but she held on. What do you think about that? She asked. I think I'm Eric's best friend, and I have no business being with you in the middle of the night. She tried to pull away, but he tried to pull away, but she came with him, backing him up against the bed. Shelley, you have to stop this now. I know you need reassuring. I'm telling you, you are a beautiful woman. Everywhere you go, men look at you with desire in their eyes. However, Shelley, you are the wife of my best friend. Now you have to let me take you to bed. She giggled. That's what I'm talking about. He smiled, very funny. He finally jerked his hand from her. He was Eric's best friend, but he was also a red-blooded, single male who hadn't been in a relationship for a while, and Shelley was one of the sexiest women he'd ever set eyes on. Her athletic body, her sweet mouth, huge brown eyes, and that hair, thick, long, voluptuous, golden brown curls. She leaned closer and he tumbled back across the bed and she came down on top of him. Oh, oh, now this is nice, she said, running her hands over his chest. You're very handsome, Justin. Did you know that? Very handsome. He tried to hmm? He tried to toss her off him, but she held on. Shelley, get up. Why don't you love me any more, Eric? Why? She cried. I'm not Eric, Shelley. It's me, Justin. He grabbed her shoulders and pushed her upward. Shelley, get up, he demanded. Dear God, please help me, he muttered. He rolled her over onto her back and pushed himself off of her, but she was too quick, and she wrapped her arm around his neck in a headlock and pulled him back down. Please, Eric, show me you still love me. Shelley, I'm not Eric. She pulled his head down and kissed him. That gave him the motivation to pull away from her. She was crying, whimpering really. How he hated what was happening to this family. He turned away, trying to keep his eyes off her. And when he turned back, she was sound asleep. Thank goodness, he said softly. Justin scooped her up and carried her to bed. After tucking her in, he went quietly back to his room. He sat on the bed in a daze, and then it hit him, and guilt consumed him. He'd wanted her. He'd wanted his best friend's wife. The man who'd befriended him when he and his brother first came to America, the man who'd trained him, who was completely loyal to him, and how had he repaid him? By taking his wife? Oh, he hadn't, of course, but he'd wanted to, and he now had knowledge of things he should never have knowledge of, like how it feels to kiss her, among other things. What had he done? He groaned inwardly. Would he ever be able to look Eric in the eyes again? Would he ever be able to look at Shelley at all? She probably wouldn't even remember the episode. Hopefully, she won't remember. It would relieve his conscience to talk to Eric and to tell him how it happened and to confess and have Eric absolve him. Yet, with the way things are between them right now, that would be selfish. Who knows what Eric would do? No, Justin thought. He would have to keep this to himself and hope that Shelley doesn't remember anything. And that is the end of chapter 7.